Good day to all viewers. This video is dedicated to all those whose works is mentioned below in the video description. I would like to introduce this topic as a potential eye-opener for the country of Egypt. Environmental and Sustainability Studies, Module 211, Environmental Economics. Can carbon dioxide levels be dropped in Alexandria, Egypt? And so we begin. Alexandria, Egypt, known as the City of Mystery. More than 2 billion people travel to the city every year. Be it business, as Egypt is commonly used as a go-between for international meetings, or to visit the pyramids, the most mysterious of all ancient civilizations. The mystery of the dead and alive are examined in this city. This city will be assessed by means of CO2 emissions. An introduction to stabilisation wedges. The stabilisation wedges concept is a simple tool for conveying the emissions cut that can be made to avoid dramatic climate change. We consider two futures, allowing emissions to double versus keeping emissions at current levels for the next 50 years. The emissions doubling path estimates the future carbon emissions. The climb approximately extends the climb for the past 50 years, during which the world's economy grew much faster than its carbon emissions. Emissions could be higher or lower in 50 years, but this path is a reasonable reference scenario. In contrast, we can prevent a doubling of carbon dioxide if we can keep emissions flat for the next 50 years, then work to reduce emissions in the second half of the century. This path is predicted to keep atmospheric carbon under 1,200 billion tons, which corresponds with about 550 million parts per million, allowing us to skirt the most predicted consequences of climate change. What does these wedges mean? Efficiency and conservation refers to a reduction in waste products, trying to do the most with what you have, or upgrading to a more suitable option. Nuclear electricity. Increasing the use of nuclear energy products to reduce the use of less environmentally sustainable ones. Fossil fuel-based wedges. I do not particularly agree with these strategies, therefore I will not be using this method. Renewable and biostorage. The most well-known. Solar power and hydroelectricity is of this strategy, as well as other methods. So what does Egypt's wedges look like? Let's have a look. We have smoking, solar power, walking, as in transport, that the economic way, telecommunications, the scale of local produce, or the sale thereof, carbon capturing, hydroelectricity, and nuclear energy. Let's have a look at these aspects. Smoking. You may find this hard to believe, but the trace amounts of carbon dioxide and other pollutants in cigarette smoke have, at most, a minimal effect on the climate. In fact, theorizes John M. Wallace, a professor at the University of Washington's Climate Research Department, it might even counteract global warming by an equally minuscule amount, because the white particulate matter in smoke would reflect some of the sun's energy, thereby minimizing heat. But this is not the entire story. Tobacco must be grown, and that process puts a serious heat on the environment. The plant itself is very demanding, absorbing 6 times at most crops do. Farmers in some developed nations grow tobacco until the soil is useless, and then clear out forests for fresh land. In those areas, 600 million trees are felled and burned annually to dry and cure tobacco leaves. Additionally, 4 miles of paper an hour is used to wrap and package cigarettes. Setting aside the pollution generated from manufacturing cigarettes, just losing this many carbon dioxide absorbing trees leaves at least 22 million net tons of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, roughly equivalent to burning 2.8 billion gallons of gasoline. The damage isn't confined to the air either. According to common estimates, tobacco companies produce 5.5 trillion cigarettes every year, approximately 900 for each person in the world. Of those 4.5 trillion have non-biodegradable filters that are tossed away, representing as many as 1 out of every 5 pieces of litter. Cigarette butts require months or even years to break down, releasing almost 600 chemicals into the soil. So although most scientists believe that the act of smoking itself has a zero net effect on global warming, secondhand smoke appears to be a minor annoyance compared with the large damage cigarettes do to the planet. Because Egypt is a major source of tobacco, and tobacco farms, it will be implausible to ask them to stop making cigarettes. But by advertising e-cigarettes, which in actual fact do not rely on tobacco, we could reach 2.8 billion tons of carbon dioxide being removed by just halving the amount of people who smoke cigarettes to e-cigarette smokers, as the image suggests. Solar power. More than 600 megawatts of hybrid gas solar plants, including a total of 40 megawatts of solar shade, have been installed during the last 3 years in the MENA or MENA region, demonstrating the feasibility of the technology in developing countries. Avoidance of 20,000 tons of carbon dioxide emissions annually by the plant in Morocco and 40,000 tons of carbon dioxide emissions in Egypt, and less dependence on fossil fuels. This provides a significant job creation within the country. Specialized renewable energy institutions have been established in Morocco and Egypt, pave the way for further projects and donor commitment in this field. Based on successful demonstration of CSP projects in those countries, Morocco announced a plan targeting 2,000 megawatts of solar electricity production by 2020, and in 2010 launched preparation of a 500 megawatt plant in Kuwait. Egypt plans to build a 100 megawatt solar plant in Kom Ombo. Concessional loans from the Clean Technology Fund, CTF, and the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, IBRD, as well as support from other donors, have now been mobilized to install 1 gigawatt of purely solar energy plants within the region, helping countries diversify their energy supply, reduce carbon dioxide emissions, and create new jobs and opportunities in local industries. Walking, cycling, or taking public transport. Egypt's oil production before 2004 has been prosperous, even though the productions and consumptions have been in negative growth. After 2004, leading towards 2010, Egypt has reached a point where they consume more oils than they produce. As Egypt faces this issue, they have made efforts to increase public transport. This plans on alleviating up to 30% of Egypt's total fuel or oil needs by 2030. But is it too late? Telecommunicate or teleconference. This aims at reducing unnecessary business flights by using internet or satellite images, allowing meetings to resume as planned, without of course the excessive fuel costs of planes. By reducing the calculated amount of business trips by 25%, an estimated 320 million tons of carbon dioxide will be reduced from the country's emissions. Buy local produce. On average, 60.2 million tons of fuel is wasted per month on the transport of imported foods. As local foods, an annual record of 103 million tons of CO2 on average. This is the amount of petrol or fuel used via transport within the country. If Egypt is to resort to local food as preference, carbon dioxide emissions would decrease by up to 60%. Carbon capturing. The US Geological Survey, USGS, conducted a detailed assessment and found 36 regions across the country that have a proper subterranean condition to store between 2,400 to 3,700 metric gigatons of carbon dioxide underground, a process known as geologic carbon sequestration. 1 gigaton is equal to a billion metric tons. In a separate report released in early June, the US Energy Information Administration, an organization that collects and analyzes statistics on energy production and consumption, projects the United States will emit approximately 5.4 metric gigatons of fossil fuel-related carbon dioxide in 2030, which includes coal, natural gas, and petroleum emissions. Based on these estimates, the USGS findings represent a vast, untapped resource that could help reduce carbon dioxide emissions and mitigate the impact that they have on Earth's climate, said Brianna Modic, a geologist at the Natural Resources Defense Council, NRDC, a non-profit environmental advocacy group headquartered in New York City. The study identified the largest storage potential in the coastal plains region, which encompasses much of the Gulf Coast. The area could account for roughly 2,000 metric gigatons, or 65% of the country's storage potential. According to the USGS report, the other areas with considerate storage capacity include Alaska region and the Rocky Mountains. As Egypt has the potential and ability to store carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, there is a high possibility for Egypt to remove up to 3.2 billion tons of carbon dioxide under the vast deserts annually. Hydroelectricity. Egypt has currently 4% of its power storage resulting from hydroelectricity. The Nile River water is captured right before it reaches the river mouth. To increase or upgrade the technology of the dam, it is possible to add an extra 2% of electricity to the power grid by 2017, relieving about 20.8 million tons of carbon dioxide per year. Nuclear power. Egypt plans to develop its coal-fired power capacity significantly over the next 15 years. While the country currently has no coal-fired power plants, plans are afoot for the sector to be built, up to the extent that it contributes 15% of the country's power generation by 2030, making it second only to gas-fired power storage. Mohammed Salah Al-Sokhi, Executive Chairman, New and Renewable Energy Authority, NREA, made comments to the effect that the Egypt Energy Investment Summit in Cairo on Wednesday. Al-Sokhi revealed that the planned installed capacity for power generation in Egypt by 2030 is natural gas and dual fuel oil 49%, coal 15%, wind 10%, photovoltaic solar power 10%, concentrating solar power 6%, nuclear power 4%, hydro 3%, simple cycle 3%. Let's sum it all up. Smoking is one of the biggest producers of carbon dioxide emissions, as well as carbon sequestration being two of the biggest and best methods for reducing carbon dioxide, as in the country's given limit. By these two methods alone, 6.4 billion tons of carbon dioxide can be reduced annually, thus making the wedges balance out, as all the other methods, including these two, count for roughly 8.6 billion gigatons, or 8.6 billion tons annually, if they are to be implemented. Thus, it is possible for Alexandria, Egypt to reduce its carbon emissions, as well as conserve and reduce the amount that has already been emitted. Thank you for watching my video. And remember, don't breathe out, only breathe in.